Indiana in the Morning, presented as always by First Commonwealth Bank on the Voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160. Time now for another interview segment presented by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. And you know this guy. He was on yesterday and the day before doing some sports and talking about his book. Today, though, we're going to have a little bit more of a somber conversation. Somebody you admired the most. This is Jack Benedict. Jack, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much, Jake. You guys can't get rid of me.
We just keep pulling you right back in. It's a vortex, really. But we're here today to talk about probably one of the biggest pioneers in sports and radio broadcasting, and that's Vin Scully, who passed away. Well, at least it was announced last night that he passed away at the age of 94. And you grew up listening to him, pretty much formulating how you call your game after Vin Scully. And you were up last night when the news broke. Can you just take me through the moments when that news broke on the game?
Well, actually, I was watching the Dodgers-Giants game, and about midway through the game, the news came that Vin Scully had passed away at the age of 94. The broadcaster, the play-by-play man, Brian Anderson, actually grew up in the Dodger system. He was in the minor leagues. He was a broadcaster for San Antonio, which was a Dodger minor league team at that time. So he was pretty emotional about it, and the news broke, and then they showed a couple of clips, of his famous calls and all that sort of thing. So I went back and I just Googled it. I have Vin Scully's book. In fact, I don't know how I managed to get two of them, but I do have. It's simply called Pull Up a Chair, which gives you kind of the idea what Vin Scully was all about. It's like, hey, Jake, pull up a chair. We'll talk baseball. He was that kind of guy. And I know one time I was watching one of the award shows that he achieved one of his many, many awards, and, the applause and this and that, and he comes up and he simply says, hey, it's only me. And he was so humble, but he could weave a story and never take you away from the game like anybody has ever done, and I don't think will ever do. And one of the clips that I picked up when I checked it online and his background, which I knew a lot, but I wanted to know more, is he was doing the play-by-play of a Dodger game, and he was talking about the background of beards. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, he's talking about beards because there were so many players now in Major League Baseball who have beards, and he went on. It was fabulous. He mentioned, I think it was Alexander Hamilton. He said, Alexander Hamilton thought he was so handsome he wouldn't wear a beard because it would cover his face. I mean, he's educating me on this while he's doing a play-by-play, and just fantastic.
And one of the things that I think we see a lot of commentators do, they try to intertwine these stories in between things, but Vin Scully had a little bit of a different approach to it that just sounded so fluid. Why is that so? Why was Vin so good at doing that sort of thing?
He was just blessed, I guess. I mean, he learned. His mentor was Red Barber, who was one of the first broadcasters to go into the Hall of Fame. And Red Barber told him, he said, this was like when Vince first started in 1950, just be yourself. So they were totally different as far as their broadcasts were concerned. But Scully, he and in later years, he did the games himself on one-man show. We've been familiar with that down through the years.
Oh, yeah.
For different reasons. But I don't know. He was just blessed with the talent, and he was so fluid, so classic. And just don't try to. Other broadcasters have imitated him, and they sound like it, but you can't really imitate Vin Scully.
Yeah, you can't beat the original.
No.
Now, you as a lifelong Dodgers fan, you grew up with Vin Scully as the main voice of the Dodgers. How did you take anything that he'd do and sort of mold it into how you commentated? And I know you mentioned him in your book once or a few times. Just how has he been an influence in your career path?
Well, you learn little things from people along the way, broadcasters. I hope we, learned some things. One of the things he always said is, you're not bigger than the game. And even when he made some of those great calls, like on Henry Aaron's home run, it was the TV game, of course, he just let Henry Aaron circle the bases. He said nothing. The crowd did it. In Koufax's perfect game in 1965, he did the same thing. I mean, there's a differentiate there of about 10 years. And he just came up with things, Kirk Gibson's home run, and look who's coming out of the dugout.
Yep.
You know, that sort of thing, because Gibson had been, he just had that knack. So don't try, I think, no matter what you're doing, don't try to be a phony. You know, be yourself.
Do you have any of his, were any of his calls top your list? Do they top your list, or are they all just one collectively great moment?
I think the Gibson home run, the Kirk Gibson home run against Eckersley in 1988, it's the greatest home run in Dodger history. Mm-hmm. And for everything that surrounded it, he wasn't supposed to play and all this and all that. And then, you know, he hits the home run. And I love the call in, there's no actual video of Koufax's perfect game in 65. There are still photos. But he struck out, Koufax did, in the perfect game, the last 6 batters he faced. And his curveball wasn't working that day. But those are a couple of them. And I just, the Dodgers have been losing some people. And then, you know, the other day, Bill Russell, one of my favorite athletes of all time. But listen, as we get older, this happens.
Yeah, Father Time catches up with everyone. Dodgers president and CEO Stan Kasten, in his statement, called Scully not only a really good man, but a really great humanitarian, too. Can you talk about just how much of a humanitarian, how true that statement is?
He was a great Christian man. He lost his first wife, who died of an accidental medication, overdose, but it was an accidental thing years ago. He remarried, and his wife Sandy died in I think it was January 2021 of ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. They were married for 48 years, and he had children, stepchildren, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. He loved his family, and he just knew 67 years when it was time to call it a day. And he said that he probably could have kept going for a while, but that's it. I just think he was a great human being, and we've lost really a great man.
And we'll wrap up the conversation here. We referenced that you have mentioned Vin Scully in your new book, and we've talked about it for the past however many weeks. What exactly did you mention in that, just as a teaser to the listeners? What all did you mention about Vin in your book and took away from that?
I mentioned, I believe the chapters Color Them Red, and it's a combination of Red Barber into Vin Scully, Vin Scully's mentor, and just the professionalism that he had, and the opportunity I had some years ago when we visited Dodger Stadium to tour the day before we saw one of the games, to tour the Dodger Stadium itself, and I sat in his seat as I'm sitting in a seat right now. So that's the closest. I never met him. Saw him in the press box years ago down at Three Rivers, I guess it was. So I at least had an opportunity to sit. And here's something to tell you how great he was. I found this out watching the game last night. Is the Dodgers were playing the Giants, their arch rivals. The press box at the Giants Stadium is named for Vin Scully. I mean, this is an opposing team.
Yeah.
Maybe. That's amazing.
That's awesome.
It is. Yeah. And I think one of the greatest interviews he said he ever did was near the end, is when he was with Willie Mays. And I think Vin and I agree, Willie Mays was the greatest we ever saw.
I would agree, too. I mean, he's a generational talent, and Vin Scully, just one of a kind. And it's unfortunate that, he's no longer here with us. But, every day, night, no matter wherever we may be, it'll always be a great day for Dodger baseball.
You said it. That's what he always said when you entered. It's time for Dodgers baseball.
And then at the end, bids everybody a pleasant good evening.
Yeah, you got
Jack, thanks so much for talking to us about Vin Scully, one of your heroes growing up. And this is something that, not many people can talk about. So we thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for letting me pull up a chair.
Jack Benedict talking about the legendary broadcaster Vin Scully passing away at the age of 94 on the Voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160.